All right, welcome back to Social 20-1, and we are looking at the French Revolution. And today we are going to look at some questions that maybe cause some difficulty on the exam for some of our students. Now, not everybody's done yet, so I won't be releasing this video until either everyone's done or the day is up. But we can see that the early questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, we don't have any need to go over those. So why were they so easy? They were the ones that were simply matching questions about Montesquieu, Rousseau, Hobbes, and Locke, and matching their ideas, their ideological perspectives about human nature, about the social contract, role of government, that kind of stuff. So you guys did well on those ones. It was a matching sort of section of the exam. Moving on to number 5, we had lots of success with number 5. Taken in context, which group would be most supportive of Paine's perspective from source 1? And here's Paine's perspective from source 1, so you have to get that perspective and then apply it to the groups that we see within the sources. And we had 100% on that. But here we had some issues. So number 6, we had the majority of you found the right answer. So 7 of the first 9 that wrote the exam. But we had some pull to A, some pull to D, so let's go back and look at why it is C for number 6. A relationship that exists among the sources is the new relationship shown in source 3 shows the consequences of the opposed group from 2 implementing the logic from 1. So new relationship in 3, the third estate is in control, shows the consequences of the oppressed group from 2. So they were the oppressed group here because they're the ones carrying the burden of the others, following the logic of 1. It is the violence which is done and threatened to our persons, so these guys are threatened, which consensuously qualifies the use of arms. So because of the burden, because of the threat of violence here, that's why they've taken up arms and overchanged the system, right? Renegotiated the power within the system. There's been an upheaval of the established norm. But let's see what the pull to A was, because we had one A and one D. The sentiment in 1 was created as a reflection on the successes enjoyed by those in power in 2. So 1 is shown to say, you know what, this is great for us. Now we know Paine was speaking with regards to self-determination. Paine was talking about challenging feudalism and not promoting it. So if Paine was a traditionalist, maybe even a classic conservative that was wishing to maintain the old regime, maintain feudalism, continue that old regime, then it might have been A, but it's not A because Paine is one of our philosophers that is progressive, that is speaking about a change to society, and that's why it's not A. And then D, those in power in 3 achieve their power by ignoring the toxic ideas of the philosopher from 1, but rather using democracy. So those who pick D, you're basically saying that the monarchy in France was ended because of democracy. They had an election, and the king ran an election, and the people voted for change. That ignores the story of the French Revolution and the violence that was necessary to cast away the old order and to establish a new order. So those of you that got number 6 wrong either didn't know the violent nature of the French Revolution, that is not a part of D, or didn't understand the change that Paine was looking to achieve. Number 7, we have success again. 7 of the 9 students got it right. A little bit of a pull to B and D, so we can quickly look at 7. The most likely time period that reflected the list of principles shown in the source. Adherence to common norms. So this is the way it is. This is the way it should be. We're not going to challenge these normal behaviors that are common. Common good of community first. Collective responsibility. We respect traditions. Again, traditions, adherence to collective norms or common norms. This is a society that's not changing. A very static society. There's only one example there that's a static society, and that is A. So let's move on to number 8. finally we have a question where we have a little bit more in terms of a division between right and wrong. So we had nearly as many students get it wrong that got it right. So there's got to be a pull to A. So let's take a look. Maybe there's too much of a pull. Let's look at number 8. Although there were many attempts at authoritarianism during this unit of study, supporters of authoritarianism, okay, interesting, would most likely support. So if you don't know what authoritarianism is, the source defines it. So that's the only reason we have the source there, is to define authoritarianism. Authority from ability to control others. We desire security more than freedom. So that's what gives the legitimacy to government, is that we desire security. It kind of sounds like Hobbes, right? You know, this idea of an Hobbesian idea. Authority from ability to control others, right? So that's where the legitimacy comes, is the ability to control others. Now looking at A, because a number of you went A, right? A number of you went A. Was there authority before the French Revolution? Certainly was. But was the legitimacy of the authority based upon the ability to control others? No. Sadly, it was based upon the divine right of kings. That it wasn't your ability to rule that determined that you should be the absolute leader. It was that you're born into the position. It was that you're chosen by God through the lottery of birth. So in terms of that list, who led through not chosen by God but by ability? That was Napoleon. So the answer is D, and the answer is D just because of this part, the ability to control others, not the divine right to control others, but the idea that people, citizens, they have entered into a social contract with you. They've surrendered their natural freedom to you because you have the ability to control. King Louis XVI lacked that ability, and that's why there's a revolution. Is he didn't have control over the taxation system. He lacked control over the economy. There was a bread shortage, and therefore the people rose up. And the fact that the people rose up is a further manifestation of his inability to control the people. So that's why A is not your best answer. Good one though. Good one though. Number 9, everybody got. Number 10, everybody was right. We can take a look at number 11 now. So we have very few people get it right. Hopefully I didn't key this one wrong. That'd be embarrassing. So the key says C, but a number of you guys said D. So let's take a look at number 11. If I made a mistake, I will definitely acknowledge it. Which issue question do all of the sources address the most? Which issue question do all the sources address the most? So the real contest here is between C and D, right? So I'm going to look at C and D. To what extent did the French Revolution achieve the goals of the Third Estate? Okay, liberty, equality, fraternity. To what extent did the French Revolution achieve these goals? All right, I'm picturing that for a second. To what extent did implementing ideas of the French Revolution create change? So C and D are similar, aren't they? C is more specific to what kind of change, liberty, equality kind of stuff. So if the sources are talking about liberty and equality and not just, some other change, then C is the better answer. So we're going to look at the sources now. Which issue question do all the sources address? So the most enduring legacy of the French Revolution is nationalism, liberty, equality, fraternity, right? So nationalism's fraternity. Nationalism was certainly not invented by the revolution, but the revolution transformed it. So that does apply to C and D, but it is talking about C more specifically. But we have to look at the other two sources. Could still be wrong. The French Revolution, though it seemed a failure in 1799 and appeared nullified by 1815, had far-reaching results. In France, the bourgeois and landowning classes emerged as the dominant power. Feudalism was dead. Social order and contractual relations were consolidated by the Code Napoleon. The revolution unified France and enhanced the power of the national state. Revolutionary and Napoleonic wars tore down the ancient structure of Europe, hastened the advent of nationalism, and inaugurated the era of modern total warfare. So it talks about nationalism, it talks about equality, Code Napoleon, talks about social equality legal equality. It does mention that total warfare. So if we have one thing on the side of D so far, it's the fact that it mentions total warfare. So right now we've got like 3 things pulling us to C and maybe 1 thing pulling us to D. The fact that D allows us to talk about, yes, they talk about total warfare as well. Looking at the answers though, which issue do all of the sources address the most? Well, I have to be honest though, the first source didn't talk about anything outside of liberty, equality, fraternity, right? So we're looking for something that all 3 address, and all 3 of them might not be addressing D. Let's look at 3. The French Revolution in 1789 had a momentous impact on neighboring countries. The French Revolutionary armies during the 1790s and later under Napoleon invaded and controlled large parts of Europe. Together with invasion came various radical institutional changes. French invasion removed the legal and economic barriers that had protected the nobility, clergy, guilds, and urban oligarchies and established the principle of equality before the law. So it's talking about a national response to Napoleon by Germans, Italians, Spanish. It's talking about equality, taking away that protection of nobles, clergy, and guilds. And it's talking about liberty. It's talking about liberal change. So although there is a pull to D, C is the better answer because the change that the 3 are talking about is the goals of the third estate: liberty, equality, fraternity. Having said that, I might be moved to go and give everybody that got that one wrong a little bit of a bump there, but you have to agree with me that definitely when we address what did all 3 address, they're talking about liberty, equality, fraternity. Not all 3 are talking about just changes. To what extent did implementing ideas of the revolution create change? But yeah, I'll probably go back on that and help you guys out. Let's look further. So I got to take a note of number 11. Get me a pen. Number 12, we had nearly consensus on the correct answer. Let's look at C for a second. Critics of Napoleon may respond to the conclusion drawn by the sources above by. So one of you said, no, you know what, I think it's C. Napoleon failed to enhance the collective power of the French nation state. So when we studied Napoleon, we looked at Napoleon's empire. We looked at the power of the state through concentration of the economy and stuff. So we had lots of evidence that the power of the nation state, even within France, not even just relative to its neighbors, but within France, the central government became much more powerful. So sadly, that is not correct. 13, we can consider B for a moment. Let's take a look at B. The reaction of the event allowed the French people to act on the desire to create something. So the event is the storming of the Bastille. The reaction to the storming of the Bastille allowed the French to create individual identities based on plurality, collective identities separate from the king, democratic freedom from the oppression of the state, patriotism as a consequence of the conquest of others. Lots of wordy stuff there going on. So let's see the options. We had nobody go A or D. So maybe I need to make those answers a little bit more appealing, but we had some pulled to B, but let's make sure that C is the better answer. So the reaction to the event allowed the French people to act on their desire to create democratic freedom. So was that what they're looking for? They had, before the storming of the Bastille, created a tennis court oath, and the tennis court oath said we're going to get a constitution, and then the king was sending some loyal soldiers to Paris to disrupt I wouldn't call it a revolution yet, but disrupt the attempted dissent in the streets, and seeing the threat of the king, the people went to a symbol of the king, the Bastille prison, and they stormed it, and they were trying to get munitions so that they could protect themselves from the king's authority and ultimately get that constitution. And that's why that's got to be your answer. So the other answer, B, collective identity separate from the king, they definitely want to identified different than, we are subjects to the king. But again, more specifically, they're looking for democracy. And it's not necessarily just one collective identity separate from the king. You're going to have different collective identities. Freedom of association ensures that you're not just replacing the idea that we're all subjects to the king with we're all Jacobin. The idea is they should have plurality, right? So I would argue that A might even be a better answer than B. Individual identities based on plurality, because they wanted liberty after all, right? Not conformity, which would be more inclined to B. 14, 15, let's take a peek at 15, see if there's anything about C. Number 15, the person quoted in the second source would respond to the first. The real advent of German nationalism may be traced to the days when the shadow of a Corsican adventurer was cast over the whole of Europe. The heavy boots of the troops on German soil triggered the birth of German nationalism. So the idea here is that because the French occupy Germany, then German nationalism will grow. It seems to be the same message of what we're seeing up there. So it's probably going to be support because it illustrates their argument, A, right? Whereas somebody said C with opposition because it celebrates French nationalism. Well, here it calls them the bullies. So the cartoon's not celebrating French nationalism. And neither does source 2. So neither of them are really celebrating French nationalism. They're basically implying that French nationalism will inspire French or resistance to that French nationalism. So I can't buy that answer. 16, we had again one person that might have gone the wrong direction here. Of the causes of the French Revolution listed above, factor 1 can be categorized as France had a growing number of bourgeoisie who attended salons and followed political developments in Britain and America. So let's see where you guys went with that one. Somebody went with B. So rather than social, historical. So historical would be looking at something like, long term, something that's happening, like the idea that, for generations we've had, occupation by these people or subjugation by this class. But what it's saying is that we're living in a time of change, and there's this class, the bourgeoisie, that are attending these enlightened meetings at salons and talking about change. This is a social factor, trying to change the power within society, trying to change it from the old regime of the first, second, third state to a new class system, perhaps based upon merit, not birth. And bourgeoisie, those are your capitalists. So they're challenging society. They're saying we're the new rich, not the old rich. We're not aristocracy, the old rich. We're new rich. And we have had some wealth based upon liberty, economic liberty. Now we want political liberty and social power that reflects our new position in society. 17, oh nice. Maybe we have a broken question here. A, B, C, lots of C's. Man, this makes me worried. No D's though, so that does not taste good. A, B, and C. Let's take a look. I might be wrong. I'm not above being wrong, although I was right about number 11. Remember I said I would go back and help those who maybe were misled by the question. In a classroom situation, you would have probably asked me about it. But this one makes me think I could be wrong based upon just the way you guys voted. Let's go with number 17. Which of the above factors would philosophically inspire movement towards plurality, tolerance, and individualism? Plurality means multiplicity, so lots of religions, lots of languages, lots of ideologies coexisting. Tolerance, I accept the fact you're different than I am. So which of the above would inspire movement towards that? France had a growing number of bourgeoisie who attended salons and followed political developments in Britain and America. So would that lead to plurality and individualism? Well, capitalists certainly want individualism. In these salons, you'd be listening to the works of Smith, but you'd also be listening to the works of others that would be promoting plurality and tolerance. So there's a poll to A, but let's see what the poll to B and especially C was. B, the French monarchy loaned money to American revolutionaries fighting Britain for their independence. That's not going to make people more tolerant. It's like, and if you think it is going to make people more tolerant, and you think making people tolerant is a good thing, then you can go ahead and loan me some money. We'll save the world. In the pursuit of tolerance, I think each one of you should, loan me a few $1,000s. So I don't think it's going to be that one. Although giving me money would be a good thing. So let's consider C, because a lot of you went to C. Which of the above factors would philosophically inspire that movement? Plurality, intolerance, and individualism. Intellects such as Voltaire poked fun at the nobility and challenged ordinary citizens to assert their freedom to question. Okay, wow, that is a good one. Will that lead to plurality? Yes. Individualism? Yes. Tolerance? Maybe not. But I see your point. I'm going to take that in consideration. That's a double bubble question. I don't like the fact that there's that much pull to it. So that's two. That's two questions that I'll have to go back and check. So yay me, I get to do some work now. Let's continue. 18. We got 1A, 1B, lots of D's. Which action didn't reflect its thing? So the Parisian people stormed the Bastille. They're motivated by the idea that there's going to be political prisoners in there to free. There's only like 7. So that's definitely supposed to be the answer. But what are we on? 18? We had some people go... Oh, incorrectly matched. Let's see. Maybe I misread this question already, didn't I? Number 18. Which action are incorrectly paired? Oh, okay. So this is what motivated them. What it's saying is what didn't motivate them. Ah, man, I got to start reading these questions better. So which action and motivation are incorrectly paired? Well, I guess this bold letter makes a lot of sense. So and I feel bad because somebody picked the same one that I picked without reading it properly. Louis XVI calls a meeting of the States General. He wants to solve France's economic problems, but yeah, that's what he wanted, so that's not incorrect. C, nobody went with that. But D, delegates swear the tennis court oath and proclaim themselves a national assembly. What did they want? They wanted to stop opposition to the revolutions that was growing in France. The only problem with that one that the majority of you got was the reason that they made the oath was that they wanted a constitution, not stop opposition to the revolution. The revolution hadn't started yet. So, and that wasn't their goal, is to stop the revolution at that point. Their goal was to get a constitution, which is kind of the beginning of the revolution. Yeah. There's that one. Let's go to number 19. Which motivation was founded on a false assumption? See, that's the one I thought I was reading with number 18 because I talked to some students about it. So the false assumption was this, that they stormed the Bastille to free the prisoners, but there weren't prisoners there. So the answer to 19 should be A. A couple of you picked B instead. Louis XVI calls the meeting of the States General. Why did he do it? If it's not that, then you tell me why he called it. He's trying to solve the economic problems by reforming the tax laws. That's exactly why he called the States General. So that's definitely not a right answer. Number 20. The motivation that best completes the chart. So King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette are tried and executed. Why did they do that, right? The nobles did not want to pay higher taxes. It's not really the nobles that have them executed. Revolutionaries want to prevent foreign monarchs from reinstating the king. That would make sense, right? A king must either reign or die. So if we allow him to live and we're trying to create a republic, then if we are invaded by foreigners, they'll put him back on the throne. Big pull to be then. C, the church wants to reassert its control over the French citizens. So the church kills the king to say we're in charge. Nope. The peasants want to punish someone for the trouble they're having selling their grain. The peasants weren't having trouble selling grain. They're having trouble buying grain. And that's not why the king was killed. The king was killed for B. So if you got that one wrong, it's kind of a recall question. You didn't know the events of the revolution. Chronological order. Hopefully everybody got that one right, and they did. 22, we got one person that got it wrong. We definitely spent a lot of time on the spectrum. So from left to right in the correct order, you would have radicals, then liberals, then conservatives and reactionaries. And that is the right answer. 23 though, let's take a look. So now we're using these words. I see no middle ground. This man must reign or die. Whew. It's pretty extreme. And because it's extreme, and it's a new direction, that's radical. So 23 has got to be C. So those of you that got it wrong don't understand your political spectrum. 24, all circumstances taken together, the French Revolution is the most astonishing that has hitherto happened in the world. Man, I hate old words like that. Don't you just, like, what are you even saying? The most wonderful things are brought about in many instances by means the most absurd and ridiculous, in the most ridiculous modes, and apparently by the most contemptible instruments. Everything seems out of nature in this strange chaos of levity and ferocity, and of all sorts of crimes jumbled together with all sorts of follies. Folly was the word on Wordle. These are dark and regrettable days if we've spiraled into an abyss of shameful action. So this is somebody that doesn't like to change. Are they conservative or reactionary? How much don't they like to change? It seems like they're really anti what's happening, right? So for 24, most of you went with A, which is conservative. Some of you said B, which is reactionary, which would be violence. So in order for the B, it might have a sentence like, now we must take up arms to reestablish, right? I can't see, although they're really opposed to the change, I can't see that idea of, we must use violence to reestablish the golden age of the past, right? That I'd expect with reactionary. And then we had a poll to C. What was C? See, I think people are getting radicals and reactionaries mixed up there. A radical wouldn't be looking at the French Revolution and saying it's a bad thing. A radical would be looking at it and saying it's a good thing. So what makes it conservative and not reactionary is the absence of violence quoted there. These last few years offer us irrefutable proof that if we are left unchecked by the authority of the sovereign, then we are doomed to live in a state of war with each other. I do not welcome this new anarchy that is mislabeled freedom, as this freedom has only made me a slave to the sinful nature of my neighbors. We must match their rage with ours. So the thing that makes 25 reactionary, where 24 wasn't, is we must match their rage with ours. The meaning, they are violent, we must be violent. So 25 is reactionary. And then 26, popular sovereignty was to replace divine right. The Declaration of the Rights of Man also had the goal of granting individuals the natural, inalienable, sacred human rights, including freedom, property, safety, and the right to resist oppression. So it's talking about progressive change, but unlike 23, it's not talking about killing. So it's just going to be liberal. It's going to be not radical, because it's the absence of violence. So, oh, you guys all got that one. 27. What the smoking? What happened there? Whew. What? See, this is a good reason why we go back over the exams, right? 27. Let's see. A physical manifestation. Well, I already know that the answer is the seating arrangement. It's D. Physical manifestation, right? Isn't it? Physical manifestation of the above political spectrum became evident in the seating arrangement. It's totally D. So 27 is D. That's just somehow the key is wrong. So we'll have to go back. And the neat thing about that key is I can make a change and it just updates everyone's marks. So it's easy for me, because I do like it when it's easy for me. 28. Seemed pretty good at 28. In context, the only causes of public misfortunes is referring to, and majority of you got B, but one of you went with D. So what's the difference between B and D? Dysfunctional absolute monarchy, uneasy balance between constitution and monarch. So we didn't have that balance there. at this time they're not fighting against the balance. They get the balance after the preamble, right? They don't have a constitution until this preamble's passed. So it's kind of a cause and effect, and a monkey, no, not a monkey in an egg, a chicken in an egg. Monkeys don't come from eggs. That's that one. 29, let's look at D for a second. The events that would have inspired the observation from the above question included crippling debt, the levée en masse, show trials, King Louis's use of veto. So again, this one, 29 we're on. Events that would have inspired the observation from the above question. The causes of public misfortune. So in the summer of 1789, why were the people unfortunate? Well, it wasn't because of the veto to block reforms. Again, it's a knowing the order of events. The king didn't have a veto to block reforms. He didn't have to veto. He had all the authority before the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Show trials happens later. The levée en masse happens later. Chronologically speaking, the only answer it could be is A. So there's that. Number 30. Oh no, not again. Which statement signaled the end of feudalism? The sacred rights of man present to all the members of the body politique may remind them increasingly of their rights and duty, simple and incontestable principles. How come some of these look like they're a different color? Maybe that's just me. Which statement signaled the end of feudalism? Well, let's consider what you guys had. You guys had B, C, and D. You guys went with A. That's what we're going to have to look at. Why might it be A? Which statement signaled the end of feudalism, sacred rights of man, instead of present all members of the body politique? Let's consider that. So the representatives of the French people formed into a national assembly that, considering ignorance, forgetfulness, or contempt of the rights of man to be the only causes of public misfortunes and the corruption of governments, have resolved to set forth in solemn declaration the natural, inalienable, and sacred rights of man. Which statement signified the end of feudalism? Sacred rights of man. The natural, sacred rights of man, to the end that this declaration constantly present to all members of the body politique may remind them. So, which statement signified the end of feudalism? The answer is meant to be that all members of the body politique now have power, right? Rather than just some. And that's why the poll is supposed to be B, right? It's now that all members have it, we don't have a feudal society based upon the privileges given at birth. These are now things that everyone gets. So I'm not bending on that one. 31, no need to talk about. 32, we can take a quick peek at it. See why it's A. 32. Louis XVI considered himself an absolute monarch. Okay, we know that. The sections of the declaration that would most clearly indicate that France was no longer an absolute monarchy. So there was a little bit of a poll to B and C, no poll to D. That's unfortunate. So B and C. So C is 6. The answer had 6. B had neither 3 nor 6, right? So the difference between A and C is 9. So is 9, section 9, clearly indicate that France is no longer an absolute monarchy. As all persons are held innocent until they shall have been declared guilty. If arrest shall be deemed indispensable, all harshness not essential to the securing of the prisoner's person shall be severely repressed by law. So this is the idea that everybody's innocent before the law and you can't be tortured. Could you have that relationship with government under a monarch? You certainly could. Let's look at 3 and 6. The principle of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. So no body nor individual may exercise any authority which does not proceed directly from the nation. So, the absolute monarchy, their authority came from God. Here it's saying, no, the authority of the government must come from the nation. 3 has to be included in those. This is a clear description that, we don't have a monarchy anymore. Law is expression of the general will. Every citizen has a right to participate personally or through its representative in its foundation to shape these things. Again, this is a rejection of monarchism. It's got to be 3 and 6. It's got to be A. 33. Are we on 33? Yep. 33, we look good, but let's just take a look at B. French nobles had more career opportunities than the middle class prior to the revolution. This article that suggests that these privileges have been removed is 3, 4, 6, or 11. The answer is supposed to be 6. Let's see if we see meritocracy in it. All citizens being equal in the eyes of the law are equally eligible to all dignities in all public positions, right? So we should be equally accessible to these positions, not some have privileges based upon birth. That was the poll to that. 34. Again, we did well with 34. One person got it wrong. Under the feudal system, peasants needed the permission of the lord if they were to marry and were not allowed to leave the land. The section of the declaration which most clearly changes these rules is. So which section gets rid of feudalism? This is 34. The group went with B. One person went with D. B is 4. D is 11. Let's take a look at 4. See if what we're finding here is under feudalism, peasants needed the permission of the lord if they were to marry. A section of the declaration which changes this. So something about marriage, right? Liberty comes in the freedom to do everything which injures no one. Hence, the exercise of the natural rights of each man has no limits, except those who assure that other members of the society enjoy the same rights. These limits can only be determined by law. So we're talking about marriage. Doesn't really hurt someone, I guess you're suggesting. The other answer was D, right? 34. Someone went with D, which is 11. So somebody said the free communication of ideas and opinions is one of the most precious. So that's talking about the freedom of speech, not marriage. Communication of ideas and opinions isn't about, should we get married. Each citizen may accordingly speak, doesn't say marry, write, and print with freedom. So it's not talking about ending someone's right to marry. Uh, 35, and I think we have consensus there. And then 36 we did, and then 37 we omitted. 36 we had one person go with C. So chronological order. That's a recall question. All right, so I'm going to have to go back and look to see who was impacted by those 3, and you'll probably see an update.